The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. Chapter 23. That flatterers should be shunned. One error into which princes, unless very prudent or very fortunate in their choice of friends, are apt to fall, is of great importance that I must not pass it over. I mean in respect of flatterers. These abound in courts, because men take such pleasure in their own concerns, and so deceive themselves with regard to them, that they can hardly escape this plague. While even in the effort to escape it, there is risk of their incurring contempt. For there is no way to guard against flattery but by letting it be seen that you take no offense in hearing the truth. But when everyone is free to tell you the truth, respect falls short. Wherefore, a prudent prince should follow a middle course, by choosing certain discreet men from among his subjects, and allowing them alone free leave to speak their minds on any matter on which he asks their opinion, and on none other. But he ought to ask them their opinion on everything, and after hearing what they have to say, should reflect and judge for himself. And with these counselors collectively, and with each of them separately, his bearing should be such that each and all of them may know that the more freely they declare their thoughts, the better they will be liked. Besides these, the prince should hearken to no others, but should follow the course determined on, and afterwards adhere firmly to his resolves. Whoever acts otherwise is undone by flatterers, or from continually vacillating as opinions vary, comes to be held in light esteem. With reference to this matter, I shall cite a recent instance. Father Luke, who is attached to the court of the present Emperor Maximilian, in speaking of his Majesty, told me that he seeks advice from none, yet never has his own way, and this from his following a course contrary to that above recommended. For being of a secret disposition, he never discloses his intentions to any, nor asks their opinion. And it is only when his plans are to be carried out that they begin to be discovered and be known, and at the same time they begin to be thwarted by those he has about him, when he being facile gives way. Hence it happens that what he does one day, he undoes the next. That his wishes and designs are never fully ascertained, and that it is impossible to build on his resolves. A prince, therefore, ought always to take counsel, but at such times and seasons only as he himself pleases, and not when it pleases others. Nay, he should discourage everyone from obtruding advice on matters on which it is not sought. But he should be free in asking advice, and afterwards, as regards the matter on which he has asked it, a patient hearer of the truth, and even displeased, should he perceive that any one, from whatever motive keeps it back. But those who think that every prince who has a name for prudence owes it to the wise counselors he has around him, and not to any merit of his own, are certainly mistaken. Since it is an unerring rule and of universal application that a prince who is not wise himself cannot be well advised by others, unless by chance he surrender himself to be wholly governed by some one adviser, who happens to be supremely prudent, in which case he may, indeed, be well advised. But not for long, since such an adviser will soon deprive him of his government. If he listen to a multitude of advisers, the prince who is not wise will never have consistent counsels, nor will he know of himself how to reconcile them. Each of his counselors will study his own advantage, and the prince will be unable to detect or correct them. Nor could it well be otherwise, for men will always grow rogues on your hands, unless they find themselves under a necessity to be honest. Hence, it follows that good counsels, whensoever they come, have their origin in the prudence of the prince, and not the prudence of the prince in wise counsels. Chapter 24. Why the princes of Italy have lost their states. The lessons above taught, if prudently followed, will make a new prince seem like an old one, and will soon seat him in his place more firmly and securely than if his authority had the sanction of time. For the actions of a new prince are watched much more closely than those of a hereditary prince, and when seen to be good are far more effectual than antiquity of blood in gaining men over and attaching them to his cause. For men are more nearly touched by things present than by things past, and when they find themselves well off as they are, enjoy their felicity and seek no further, they are ready to do their utmost in defense of the new prince, provided he be not wanting to himself in other respects. In this way there accrues to him a twofold glory, and having laid the foundations of the new princedom, and in having strengthened and adorned it with good laws and good arms, with faithful friends and great deeds. As, on the other hand, there's a double disgrace in one who has been born to a princedom losing it by his own want of wisdom. And if we contemplate those lords who in our own times have lost their dominions in Italy, such as the King of Naples, the Duke of Milan, and others, in the first place we shall see that in respect of arms they have, for reasons already dwelt on, been alike defective, and next, that some of them have either had the people against them, or, if they have had the people with them, have not known how to secure themselves against their nobles. For without such defects as these, states powerful enough to keep an army in the field are never overthrown. Philip of Macedon, not the father of Alexander the Great, but he who vanquished by Titus Quintius had no great state as compared with the strength of the Romans and Greeks who attacked him. Nevertheless, being a prince of a warlike spirit and skillful in gaining the goodwill of the people and in securing the fidelity of the nobles, he maintained himself for many years against his assailants, and in the end, though he lost some towns, succeeded in saving his kingdom. Let those princes of ours, therefore, who, after holding them for a length of years, have lost their dominions, blame not fortune, but their own inertness, for never having reflected in tranquil times that there might come a change. And it is human nature, when the sea is calm, not to think of storms. When adversity overtook them, they thought not of defense, but only of escape, hoping that their people, disgusted with the arrogance of the conqueror, would someday recall them. This course may be a good one to follow when all others fail, but it were the height of folly, trusting to it to abandon every other, since none would wish to fall on the chance of someone else being found to lift him up. It may not happen that you are recalled by your people, or if it happen, it gives you no security. It is an ignoble resource, since it does not depend on you for its success. And those modes of defense are alone good, certain and lasting, which depend upon yourself and your own worth. Chapter 25. What fortune can effect in human affairs, and how she may be withstood. I am not ignorant that many have been and are of the opinion that human affairs are so governed by fortune and by God that man cannot alter them by any prudence of theirs, and indeed have no remedy against them, and for this reason have come to think that it is not worthwhile to labor much about anything, but that they must leave everything to be determined by chance. Often when I turn the matter over, I am in part inclined to agree with this opinion, which has had the readier acceptance in our own times from the great changes in things which we have seen, and in every day see happen contrary to all human expectation. Nevertheless, that our free will not be wholly set aside, I think it may be the case that fortune is the mistress of one half our actions, and yet leaves the control of the other half, or a little less, to ourselves. And I would liken her to one of those wild torrents which, when angry, overflow the plains, sweep any trees and houses, and carry off soil from one bank to throw it down upon the other, Everyone flees before them, and yields to their fury, without the least power to resist. And yet, through this, be their nature, it does not follow that in seasons of fair weather, men cannot, by constructing walls and moles, take such precautions as will cause them, when again in flood, to pass off by some artificial channel, or at least prevent their course from being so uncontrolled and destructive. And so it is with Fortune, who displays her might where there is no organized strength to resist her, and directs her onset where she knows that there is neither barrier nor embankment to confine her. And if you look at Italy, which has been at once the seat of these changes and their cause, you'll perceive that it is a field without embankment or barrier. For if, like Germany, France, and Spain, had been guarded with sufficient skill, this inundation, if it ever came upon us, would never have wrought the violent changes which we have witnessed. This, I think, enough to say generally touching resistance to fortune. But confining myself more closely to the matter in hand, I note that one day we see a prince prospering, and the next day overthrown, without detecting any change in his nature or character. This, I believe, comes chiefly from a cause already dwelt upon, namely, that a prince who rests wholly on fortune is ruined when she changes. Moreover, I believe that he will prosper most whose mode of acting best adapts itself to the character of the times, and conversely, that he will be unprosperous with whose mode of acting the times do not accord. For we see that men in these matters, which lead to the end that each has before him, namely, glory and wealth, proceed by different ways, one with caution, another with impetuosity, one with violence, another with subtlety, one with patience, another with its contrary, and that by one or other of these different courses each may succeed. Again, of two who act cautiously, you shall find that one attains his end, the other not, and that two of different temperament, the one cautious, the other impetuous, are equally successful, all which happens from no other cause than the character of the times accords or does not accord with their methods of acting. And hence it comes, as I have already said, that two operating differently arrive at the same result, and two operating similarly, the one succeeds and the other not. And on this likewise depend the vicissitudes of fortune. For if one For if to one who conducts himself with caution and patience, time and circumstances are propitious, so that his method of acting is good, he goes on prospering. But if these changes, he is ruined, because he does not change his method of acting. For no man is found so prudent as to know how to adapt himself to these changes, both because he cannot deviate from the course to which nature inclines him, and because, having always prospered while adhering to one path, he cannot be persuaded that it would be well for him to forsake it. And so, when occasion requires the conscious man to act impetuously, he cannot do so and is undone. Whereas, had he changed his nature with time and circumstances, his fortune would have been unchanged. Pope Julius II proceeded with impetuosity in all his undertakings, and found time and circumstances in such harmony with his mode of acting that he always obtained a happy result. Witness his first expedition against Bologna, when Messer Giovanni Bentivoglio was yet living. The Venetians were not favorable to the enterprise, nor was the King of Spain. Negotiations respecting it with the King of France were still open. Nevertheless, the Pope, with his wonted hardihood and impetuosity, marched in person on the expedition, and by this movement brought the King of Spain and the Venetians to a check, the latter through fear, the former from his eagerness to recover the entire kingdom of Naples. At the same time, he dragged after him the King of France, who, desiring to have the Pope for an ally in humbling the Venetians, on finding him already in motion, saw that he could not refuse him his soldiers without openly offending him. By the impetuosity of his movements, therefore, Julius effected what no other pontiff endowed with the highest human prudence could. For had he, as any other pope would have done, put off his departure from Rome until terms had been settled and everything duly arranged, he never would have succeeded. For the King of France would have found 1,000 pretexts to delay him, and the others would have menaced him with 1,000 alarms. I shall not touch upon his other actions, which were all of a like character, and all of which had a happy issue, since the shortness of his life did not allow him to experience reverses. But if times had overtaken him, rendering a cautious line of conduct necessary, his ruin must have ensued, since he never could have departed from those methods to which nature inclined him. To be brief, I say that, since fortune changes and men stand fixed in their own old ways, they are prosperous so long as there is congruity between them, and the reverse when there is not. Of this, however, I am well persuaded that it is better to be impetuous than cautious. For fortune is a woman who, to be kept under, must be beaten and roughly handled. And we see that she suffers herself to be more readily mastered by those who so treat her than by those who are more timid in their approaches. And always, like a woman, she favors the young because they are less scrupulous and fiercer, and command her with greater audacity. Chapter 26. An exhortation to liberate Italy from the barbarians. Turning over in my mind all the matters which have above been considered, and debating with myself whether in Italy and at the present hour the times are such as might serve to confer honor on a new prince, and whether a fit opportunity now offers for a prudent and valiant leader to bring about changes glorious for himself and beneficial to the whole Italian people. It seems to me that so many conditions combine to further such an enterprise, that I know of no time so favorable to it as the present. And if, as I have said, it was necessary in order to display the valor of Moses that the children of Israel should be slaves in Egypt, and to know the greatness and courage of Cyrus that the Persians should be oppressed by the Medes, and to illustrate the excellence of Theseus that the Athenians should be scattered and divided, so at this hour to prove the worth of some Italian hero, it was required that Italy should be brought to her present abject condition, to be more a slave than the Hebrew, more oppressed than the Persian, more disunited than the Athenian, without a head, without order, beaten, spoiled, torn in pieces, overrun and abandoned to destruction in every shape. But though heretofore glimmerings may have been discerned in this man or that, whence it may be conjectured that he was ordained by God for her redemption, nevertheless it has afterwards had been seen in the further course of his actions that fortune has disowned him, so that our country, left almost without life, still waits to know who it is that is to heal her bruises, to put an end to the devastation and plunder of Lombardy, to the exactions and imposts of Naples and Tuscany, and to stanch those wounds of her which long neglect has changed into running sores. We see how she prays God to send someone to rescue her from these barbarous cruelties and oppressions. We see too how ready and eager she is to follow any standard, were the only some one to raise it. But at the present we see no one except in your illustrious house, preeminent by its virtues and good fortune, and favored by God and by the Church whose headship it now holds, who could undertake the part of the deliverer. But for you, this will not be too hard a task, if you keep before your eyes the lives and actions of those whom I have named above. For although these men were singular and extraordinary, after all they were but men, not one of whom had so great an opportunity as now presents itself for you. Their further undertakings were not more just than this, nor more easy, nor was God more their friend than yours. The justice of the cause is conspicuous, for that war is just which is necessary, and those arms are secret from which we derive our only hope. Everywhere there is the strongest disposition to engage in this cause, and where the disposition is strong, the difficulty cannot be great, provided you follow the methods observed by those whom I have set before you as models. But further, we see here extraordinary and unexampled proofs of divine favor. The sea has been divided, the cloud has attended you on your way, the rock has flowed with water, the manna has rained from heaven, everything has concurred to promote your greatness. What remains to be done must be done by you, since in order not to be deprive us of our free will and such share of glory as to belong to us, God will not do everything himself. Nor is it to be marveled at if none of those Italians I have named has been able to effect what we hope to see effected by your illustrious house. Or that amid so many revolutions and so many warlike movements, it should always appear as though the military virtues of Italy were spent. For this comes from her old system being defective, and from no one being found among us capable to strike out anew. Nothing confers such honor on the reformer of a state, as do the new lands and institutions which he devises. From these, when they stand on a solid basis and have a greatness in their scope, make him admired and venerated. And in Italy, material is not wanting for improvement in every form. If the head be weak, the limbs are strong, and we see daily in single combats, where few are engaged, how superior are the strength, dexterity, and intelligence of Italians. But when it comes to armies, they are nowhere. And from no other reason than the defects of their leaders. For those who are skillful in arms will not obey, and every one thinks himself skillful, since hitherto we have none among us so raised by merit or by fortune above his fellows, that they should yield him the palm. And hence it happens that for the long period of 20 years, during which so many wars have taken place, whenever there has been an army purely Italian, it has always been beaten. To this testify first Turo, then Alessandria, Capua, Genoa, Velia, Bologna, Miestri. If then your illustrious house should seek to follow the example of those great men who have delivered their country in past ages, it is before all things necessary as the true foundation of every such attempt to be provided with national troops, since you can have no braver, truer, or more faithful soldiers. And although every single man of them be good, collectively they will be better, seeing themselves commanded by their own prince, and honoured and esteemed by him. That you may be able, therefore, to defend yourself against the foreigner with Italian valor, and the first step is to provide yourself with an army such as this. And although the Swiss and the Spanish infantry are each esteemed formidable, there are yet defects in both, by reason of which troops trained on a different system might not merely withstand them, but be certain of defeating them. For the Spaniards cannot resist cavalry, and the Swiss will give way before infantry if they find them as resolute as themselves at close quarters. Once it has been seen, and may be seen again, that the Spaniards cannot sustain the ascent of the French men-at-arms, and that the Swiss are broken by the Spanish foot. And although of this last we have no complete instance, we have yet an indication of it in the Battle of Ravenna, where the Spanish infantry confronted the German companies, who have the same discipline as the Swiss, on which occasion the Spaniards, by their agility and with the aid of their bucklers, forced their way under the pikes, and stood ready to close with the Germans, who were no longer in a position to defend themselves, and had they not been charged by cavalry, they must have put the Germans to utter rout. Knowing, then, the defects of each of these kinds of troops, you can train your men on some different system to withstand cavalry and not to fear infantry. To effect this will not require the creation of any new forces, but simply a change in the discipline of the old. And these manners in reforming which the new prince acquires reputation and importance. This opportunity, then, for Italy at last to look at her deliverer ought not to be allowed to pass away. With what love he would be received in all those provinces which have suffered from the foreign inundation, with what thirst for vengeance, with what fixed fidelity, with what devotions, and what tears no word of mine can declare. What gates would be closed against him? What people would refuse him obedience? What jealousy would stand in his way? What Italian would yield him homage? This barbarian tyranny stinks in all nostrils. Let your illustrious house therefore take upon itself this enterprise with all the courage and all the hopes with which a just cause is undertaken, so that under your standard thus our country may be ennobled, and under your auspices be fulfilled the words of Petrarch. Brief will be the strife, when valor arms against barbaric rage. For the bold spirit of the bygone age still warms hearts with life. The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli.